What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video at JDH Aquatics, where we do anything aquariums related in my apartment while I'm in college. So from the title, you guys know we're going to be talking about some of the issues and kind of the hurdles that I run into having multiple reef tanks. So before we start this video, I think I should talk about the tanks that I have and which ones are the longest running tanks. Without running over equipment, because I go through that in almost pretty much every single video that I make about this tank, I'm just going to talk about the basics of what this tank is and kind of when it's been set up. So we just passed the 6-month mark on this tank, primarily softies in there. This is going to be 100% softy dominated once the 2 LPS corals come out from this corner. So once the Duncan and the green bubble go into the 20-gallon, this will be 100% softies. Now, I guess we will talk about one piece of equipment because this tank has an auto top-off system, so that does make it a little bit easier to maintain the aquarium. However, there's no controller or any other sort of like computer that runs this tank. It's simply just the auto top-off, and then everything else is done manually, of course. Now, I mentioned that this tank was a softy-only tank, or it's soon to be a 100% softy-only tank. And that makes this aquarium incredibly easy to take care of and manage. Since it's been set up for 6 months, it's slowly becoming kind of on autopilot and self-sustaining, where I maybe only have to do a water change once every week or two and clean the glass, versus maybe the 20-gallon behind me that is soon to be set up. It'll be a little bit more difficult to take care of. Whereas this tank is super easy, and like I said, it's kind of just on an autopilot. Jumping over to the 20-gallon LPS tank, this of course has no coral in it, and it has one fish. I haven't actually made any content on the fish that I put in here. I guess it's fine to say. There is a royal grama in here. However, when I put it in, it was in there for 3 or 4 days. And for those 3 or 4 days, I did not see it at all. So I thought the fish died initially when I put it into the aquarium. And what really happened is I fed it like 4 or 5 days later, just to put some food into the tank, and it actually came out and ate. So there is a royal grama in the tank. It's hiding behind a rock. And I only see it when I feed it. So super skittish fish, but it's in there. This tank will soon have coral in it once it's done kind of cycling. It's already finished cycling, but I kind of just am letting it ride for like another week or two until we put a piece of coral in there. This does not have an ATO on it, and I don't think I'm gonna add one. So this will be a little bit harder to manage, not only because it has LPS coral in it, and not only because it's a smaller tank than the 38-gallon, but it has pretty much no assistance in terms of maintenance. So topping it off, I have to do manually, and then everything else, of course, I have to do manually. So this tank has been set up for, I want to say, going on a month now. It's had water in it for probably about a month, and then in terms of putting like the ammonia source and the bacteria in there, I'd say that's only been going for about 3 weeks. So with the 38-gallon that was or is a softy only tank, this 20-gallon is going to be an LPS only tank. So we're gonna have the Duncan in there from this tank and the bubble coral, along with some euphyllias, and definitely some other LPS that I plan on throwing in there. So this will be dedicated to LPS coral, and then moving on to the third and the final tank. This is a bit of a weird angle, but this is the 3.7 gallon. It's under the 20 gallon, of course, on this 40-gallon stand. And yeah, kind of a hard angle to film, but we've had this tank set up. I think we filled this one up like a week prior to the 20 gallon. So this one's been set up for maybe 4 or 5 weeks, whatever that is. Yeah, this thing is also kind of on autopilot. I had some seeded biomedia that I took from the 38-gallon, which I think is why this tank is running so well. That media was in there for probably about 3 months, so it definitely got some good beneficial bacteria, and the cycle completed quick. There was no huge algae outbreak. And then I think another part of that is, since it is a macroalgae tank with the Chaeto in there, that of course sucks up any sort of nitrates or phosphates that might cause some other algae to grow. So this tank has been super clean and really easy to take care of. There is a single cleaner shrimp in there with a couple snails. And again, I do a water change maybe once a week, clean the glass once a week, and it's super easy to maintain. I'm sure this aquarium would be much more difficult if I had corals in it, which I'm still considering putting some frags of softies in here. But eventually, if I do decide to put corals in there, we could throw a heater in there. I'm just trying to keep it as low tech as possible. So now that we've ran over the tanks and what they are, let's go ahead and talk about some of the hurdles that I run into with having these tanks. So as I mentioned before, I only have an ATO on one of these tanks, which is the 38-gallon, and it's probably the most important tank to have an ATO on. It evaporates the most, and I mean, it currently has all of my coral in it, so eventually once we get coral in the 20-gallon LPS, I kind of need to consider getting an ATO for that tank. I just don't really want to obstruct the view with having the tubes come out and connecting to my current reservoir. I know it sounds very complicated, but it would look a little bit weird if I had an ATO hooked up to the same reservoir to the 20 gallons. So that's one of the reasons I haven't done it. Another reason is just the price of the ATO. However, I think I might add one at some point in the future. The biggest trouble or hurdle that I run into right now is topping off. So with the 38 gallon, it's pretty easy. I fill up the reservoir once every 2 weeks. It goes through about 5 gallons in about 2 weeks. So I don't think that's too bad. But with the 20 gallon and the 3.7 gallon, I have to top those off daily. So the 3.7 gallon especially, that thing will drop down. I have lines of where I mark like the water level for salinity. So it's really not that much water that gets dropped because again, I top it off every day. However, I have to do it pretty frequently. So I think if I let it go for like a week, it would drop down significantly, and it's such a small volume of water that I just can't risk that. The 20 gallon's not too bad. I top that off again daily, but it doesn't seem to drop down as much as the 3.7 gallon. But the main point of this is topping it off daily. The 3.7 gallon, I know for sure I'm not gonna have an ATO on there. The 20 gallon, I might, but just the trouble of going down, getting your water. I don't make my water, so I have to get it from a fish store. So constantly just getting fresh water like that and having to store it and top it off every day, that is one of the hurdles. Now, trouble number 2, as much as I'd like to deny it or say that reef tanks are perfect or it's easy, it's not always perfect and it's not always easy. 9 times out of 10, I would say the tanks are running good and nothing is really broken or needs to be fixed on them. However, when those times come, it seems like issues always come in threes. So say like a timer breaks on the 3.7 gallon, I go to fix that, there'll be another issue that comes up with the 38 gallon. So it seems like once I fix something, another issue will come up, and it's not even necessarily something that breaks. It could just be like an algae outbreak in this tank where I just maybe fixed it in this one. So you're always kind of juggling around what to fix and what issues are coming up in different tanks. And that is part of the fun of it. Each one is going to be reacting differently over time, so you just have to respond to that differently. With that being said, I'm not like replacing pumps every week or fixing silicone seams or anything like that. It's mostly just, like I said, if an algae outbreak happens in this tank, it's most likely that I just fixed it in this one. So it's just juggling those things back and forth. Now with this third one, it is going to involve price. With electricity, that's kind of something that is standard across the board. And the more of it you use, the more it costs, if that makes any sense. So the PG&E bill that I have, or SDGE bill that I have, because I'm in the San Diego County, it has gone up tremendously, and it's gone up for every user in general, not just because of how much electricity you're using, it's just gone up for everyone. But with that being said, of course, having 3 tanks versus 1 tank or even no tanks, my PG&E bill is a little bit higher than I'd like to pay. Now there are ways to combat that. So for example, the 3.7 gallon, I've tried to make as low tech as possible using LED lighting with just a return pump. Now the 4th hurdle, which I don't even really want to call it a hurdle because it's not, but it's going to be deciding what to get for which tank next. So of course, having 3 different tanks, you have to decide what you're gonna put in them, what kind of equipment you use. And me being on a budget, me being a college student, I can't obviously go out and buy 3 sets of things for the 3 different tanks. So I pretty much have to figure out each week what I'm going to upgrade or what I'm gonna add to these tanks. And I kind of have to bounce back and forth between each tank. Having both of these set up at the same time was kind of an issue because I did have to get new return pumps for both of them. So that was a little pricey, and some things like that you kind of have to look out for. But especially when it comes to stocking these tanks, the 3.7 gallon's pretty easy, but the 20 gallon, you know, you could probably throw in easily 20 to 25 frags of coral in there. And there's still some things that I would like to buy for the 38 gallons, so I have to juggle what I'm gonna buy next for which tank. And for my 5th and final reason, let me give you guys like a little bit of a backstory here. So the 65 gallon tank that I had, which you guys have seen in video, I bought that tank a couple of years ago in hopes that that would be like, not my one and only tank or my dream tank, but it would be big enough for me to put whatever I want in there and have just one consolidated aquarium. Over time, I started adding more aquariums, And it seems like every time I try to set up a large main reef tank, I end up setting other little ones up. So I kind of have an issue of trying to consolidate, and then eventually I just set up new tanks. So those are some of the troubles that I have with running multiple reef tanks. Like I said, I know a couple of them aren't hurdles or problems, but they're just some things that come up in my mind with having these tanks. So if you guys are interested in setting up multiple reef tanks, or if you already have an existing tank and you're considering setting up a second one, these are maybe some things to consider. If you guys have any further questions, then please let me know in the comments down below. In regards to setting up more tanks, I don't think I plan on setting up any more tanks. I think I'm probably good with the 3 for right now, at least in the space that I have, but who freaking knows? I'm kind of crazy. I feel like I set up a new tank like every month, so I'm getting the freshwater itch again, and we have an extra 10 gallons sitting around, so who knows? You guys might see something in the future. But for right now, we got the 3 reef tanks, and I think we're doing good with those. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. With all that being said, I will catch you guys on the next one. Peace out.